Hi everyone, I'm Nick Laidlaw, the CTO and co-founder of Voicify, and thanks so much for spending some time with us no matter where you are around the world today. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going over some of the basics of the platform, and then I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, and he's going to really show you the ins and outs of the platform through some use case examples. For many brands and organizations, they face an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. The opportunity is that there are millions of users and consumers out there that are using voice assistant platforms such as Google Assistant, Samsung Bixby, Amazon Alexa. Now, for many of you, this is familiar and you know this opportunity. But simultaneously, there's the challenge, the fact that this is still a bit of a fragmented industry when it comes to the platforms that brands can deploy to. Google Assistant, Samsung Bixby, Amazon Alexa, they all have different APIs. They all have different ways that they expect that you should be implementing your voice applications. So with that comes that challenge of brands having to choose which platform am I going to deploy to, or having to choose to just put in additional resources to not only build and create these experiences for the different platforms, but then to maintain them as well. With Voicify, you have the ability to create and manage your voice experience in one place and have that voice application and experience deployed to all of the platform assistants that I just talked about. Really helps to keep things consolidated, and it really helps to manage your spend and the resources that are required to keep an application up to date. In addition to the ability of deploying to voice assistant platforms, Voicify also supports conversational chatbots as well. So this is really useful where you can, again, create one conversational experience within the Voicify platform, have it deployed to Alexa, Google Assistant, etc., but then also have it deployed to chat services such as Slack or Microsoft Teams as well. At its core, the platform is really doing four things. Number one, we're making it easier for brands and organizations to create cross-platform applications via configured modules and features that really allow them to do this in a non-technical way. That second pillar is the ability to deploy to all of the assistant platforms that I mentioned earlier, really just driving home that capability of deploying or creating once and deploying to many. Third, within the content management aspects of the platform is the ability to really easily maintain your content within an interface that is familiar and comfortable for many digital team members who are already accustomed to working with content management systems such as Episerver, WordPress, Sitecore, you name it. For them, this is going to be an easy to use platform. One thing to note within that third pillar is that our platform offers the ability to integrate via Open API. So if you have third-party systems that you want to integrate within your voice experience, you'll have the ability to do that within our API platform, or I should say our API layer. And in addition, if you wanted to just build something that's completely bespoke, you are able to leverage all of our APIs to build something completely custom without even using the Voicify interface, if that's a requirement. Last but not least is the ability to collect and analyze your voice analytics data. This is extremely important as many brands and organizations are now really being forced to make sure that every dollar that's spent is really driving value. So this is a great way to get a better sense of engagement, to also get a better sense of how people may be talking about your brand or talking about some of your services in the language that the customer is using. This is very different in terms of what kind of analytics you might get from just general search within a website, where people speak very differently than perhaps they would type in search within just a standard search bar within your website. So now I'm going to pass this off to Alex, and he's going to go over some of the capabilities of the platform so that you can see it firsthand.
Thanks, Nick. I'm Alex Dunn. I'm the director and principal architect at Voicify, and today I'll take you through some of the stuff we can do on the platform. I think the best way to do that is really to just kind of dig in and actually build something. So what I'm going to do is take you through building an experience that involves both conversational aspects to help you find the right content and help your users find the right content, and then enable pulling in remote sources for like podcasts and live audio streams as well. So today we'll focus on doing that for CBS. So to start in Voicify, we have a brand new organization here with no apps created yet. So I can just go in and say create a new app, and I'm going to call this my CBS. The invocation name we can specify with the sort of character spacing with C period space B period space S period to tell Alexa and Google Assistant that these are an acronym, and then we can just say that we have demo for our descriptions. Now in building an app on Voicify, I can choose to either start with some sample content to help me get started, or just a fully blank slate here with custom/none. I'm going to choose to use sample content here because it's going to scaffold us stuff like welcome messages, help, and fallback that we can change later. And then from there, we'll get into building on the rest of our flows. So now I have my sample content folder generated for me. If I go into this, you'll see we have different conversation items that were created for us ahead of time as part of that starter kit. We've got a welcome message, a fallback message, help, exit, and a sample question and answer. Let's go adjust our welcome message to help introduce users to our app. So I'll change the name here from sample to default, and then down here we get to provide our response. So Voicify scaffolded it with welcome to your Voicify app, try asking some questions. But we need to be able to tell our users what they're actually going to be able to do with my CBS app, whether it's on Google or Alexa, chatbot, or otherwise. So here we can say something like, welcome to my CBS. You can ask about podcasts by category, or say live stream to hop into the live stream. Some other cool things we can do here as part of the Voicify tooling is add SSML. So for example, to guarantee that CBS here is going to be spelled out rather than trying to be spoken as a word, we can highlight it, go to SSML, say as characters, and add it. This will show up in our visual editor here so we know that CBS is being read as characters. We can always do other cool stuff here as well, like add pauses, upload custom audio, add different effects as well, and use that to basically formulate the best response we can, make sure it's consistent across each of the assistants. Some other things we can do here, we can update media for screen-based devices or otherwise, meaning that we can add images or long-form audio, so think of more like podcasts or songs or something like that. This is where we would be using the audio player on Alexa or media responses, different from the SSML audio. And also where we can add videos. Once we have those, we can then attach them. We can also choose how they're used. So if we have like a foreground image versus background, we can also change our display text and title. And down here, we can also customize for specific devices. So for example, even if I had a custom APL response I wanted to provide to the Alexa small screen round category like the Echo Spot, I can do that by choosing either one of the pre-built templates, or if I want to do it on a different Alexa device, I can use a different override, and then, for example, I can grab the Alexa presentation language and paste my markup here. That allows us to customize on every type of device we want to, including doing things like using custom SSML, custom media, etc. For now, we'll leave it plain with just our output speech. And then the last thing we need to do is choose what happens next in the conversation. And we control that in the conversation follow-up. We have either the default, which sort of assumes we've prompted the user like we have here. We could also choose to suggest more content, which lets us create a reusable tool and follow-up that includes some more SSML we can attach, as well as things like on-screen hints. We could also use a targeted response, which similarly lets us use the follow-up language, But then we, instead of being open-ended, we're actually just choosing the next set of conversation items the user can go to. We'll use this a little bit later as we start to build out more content. We can also choose to enforce those responses, meaning that the user has to go to one of the ones we've specified here. And if they don't, they say something sort of out of bounds, then we can provide a contextual fallback or help message. Lastly, we can also control a reprompt. So for now, I'm going to leave this with just the default. We don't need to worry about on-screen hints or anything. We're going to be running this demo just from an Echo spot, so we'll just focus on the audio quality for now and the conversation design. So what I can do is save and close this. Now, like I said, and like our welcome message says, we're trying to build an app and an experience that lets people play the live stream and also play different podcasts and search by category. So in the CBS app, we can search by different categories and allow the user to find the right podcast without having to remember the title or the name or the date or something like that. So to start, I'm going to add a new folder called Podcast Searching. And then we're going to create a new category question and answer item in here. This is another type of conversation item that Voicify supports, just like the welcome message. Except in this case, we can add different phrases for how a user is going to get here, but then we're still controlling our response using the exact same tools. We have variations of our output speech, we can attach media, and we can attach a different follow-up. So in this case, I want to be able to specify that this is politics. So if someone wants to learn about politics, they'll be able to say things like politics, or what are the politics podcasts? And we can always add as many more as we want. The cool thing about Voicify is that we don't have to control every single input variation or every single utterance that someone's going to say to match with this conversation item. Instead, we just need to make sure we're covering the sort of wide range of options, meaning both in structure and in subject. The reason for that is that Voicify runs some secondary NLU after it already goes through processing from Alexa and Google or wherever other platform you're deploying your app to, and then tries to find it based off the best match on a subject-based search. So instead of having to say, tell me about your politics podcasts or tell me about politics or something like that, totally different structure than what we've written here, we just have to worry about making sure that we're sort of covering politics. But if we have stuff that starts to sort of overlap, then we can add some more coverage. Now, for this response that we want to provide to the user when they're asking about politics podcasts, we can offer them the names of a few or even offer to play the latest. So here I'll say, we have a number of different politics podcasts. Would you like to just hear the latest? You can also say the name of a specific episode. Now, because we're basically prompting them with this yes and no, we might want to actually move this down to a follow-up. So instead, I'm going to choose a targeted response and put this whole prompt in here in our follow-up language. And basically, these two responses here between this sentence and these two will be combined into the final output speech. Now, I need to be able to choose what happens, what happens when someone does say yes, I would like to hear the latest podcast, or if they say no, or if they say the name of a specific episode. We need to handle those scenarios contextually from this item. We do that by generating new conversation items and using them as targeted responses. So in this case, I can go and add a new expected response and say that it's a simple choice, so that would be like a yes or no, and say yes, listen to latest in politics. And I'll create another one here for no, don't play the latest. And then we can go and create other conversation items like question and answers or latest messages or anything else. But for now, we'll stick on just setting up these two for this demo. I can save and activate this item. And now we'll need to go add the responses to these yes and no's. So let's go to the no one first because that's going to be pretty simple. We're going to want to set the phrases no, so that's what they say if they don't want to listen to it. And for the response options, we can say, well, what else can I help you with? And then just save and activate this. Now the yes option, this should just start playing the episode. So instead of saying no, we choose yes, and then instead of using a response output here, we can say you're listening to the latest in politics. And that's it. We don't need to attach media yet because instead of uploading a podcast, which you most certainly can do, we're instead going to actually go grab it from a third-party media source using an integration. So I'll save and activate this. And now let's head over to our integrations tab. So back at the top, we can go to our integrations at our organization level and choose to add a new one. This is where you'll see all of the first-party supported integrations that Voicify has, built by us and our tech partners. So things like Amazon Pay for taking in payment, Twilio for sending text messages or initiating calls to your users, creating a flash briefing based off of your existing content, using Coveo to handle searching against all of your different sources, etc. You can also create custom webhooks here, which we won't get into in this demo, but this is where developers can start to make their own implementations of integrations that tie into Voicify apps and are reusable wherever. For now, we're actually going to use this pre-existing one called Remote Content Fulfillment. When I add this, it's going to generate a webhook for me. This webhook I can now use to attach to different conversation items across Voicify on any of my apps within this organization. This webhook has some rules where I can specify basically like what media I want. I can do JSON traversal over an object from a remote source, but all I really need to specify is a URL and what properties I want to override. Webhooks in Voicify fall into two different categories. There are response resolvers and events. This one is a content item response resolver, which means that I can attach it to conversation items, but I could also create it as an application feature response resolver, which means I could attach it to an entire folder or even the entire app level if I want all of my requests going out to here. Events work a little bit differently. They can be attached at any level, but then are fired based off of what happens in the context of a conversation, such as anytime you receive a request or if a request is hitting a specific conversation item. The biggest difference between them, though, is that response resolvers actually have the ability and really the duty to return a response that overrides part of what's built into the conversation item. That means if we attach it to this conversation item here for yes, listen to the latest in politics, we can override anything from here down. So we can do things like change the SSML, we can reply with new media like audio or images, and we can even change the scope of the follow-up based off of some custom business logic. You can also do things like store things in session attributes and move on from there. So what we want to do is have this actually return an audio file that we already have access to that's going to be an MP3 coming from CBS's podcast feed. So let's go ahead and get that started. So all we have to do is go over to the Integrations tab, and now we'll be able to see in this dropdown that remote content fulfillment we had before. When we click Update, we can now edit custom properties on this, and this is where different webhooks and different integrations can implement what they want to work with whatever platforms or changes in business logic they need to support. So in this case, the remote content fulfillment allows us to specify properties like URLs or variables we want to replace, but one of the things we can do is specify audio and pass in a URL. What we have here is the URL for the latest podcast from CBS's Evening News around politics. So when I hit save on this, now when someone hits this conversation item, instead of using the output speech, we're going to instead return an audio player response with this audio file. Now let's go do the same thing once we save and close this for our live stream. Like we said in the welcome message, users should be able to just say live stream to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and call this our live stream, and then we can enter in again a few different ways that people might get to this. So we can say live stream, we can do two different words here for live stream, or play the live stream, and that should be sufficient. So now again in the output response we want to say you are listening to CBS Live, although this shouldn't really be hit. When we save this, we can now go back in and add that integration the exact same way, but this time we'll use a different URL. We'll add remote content fulfillment, click update, edit our properties, add one for audio, and then paste in our value. We can hit save, and now we're good to go. So it's great, we've built out our content and people can ask all about it, and they can say yes, they want to listen to one in politics, or they can play the live stream, but now we need to actually get this onto the different platforms. We can start in this demo just by deploying it to Alexa. So to do that, we go to Settings and Deployments, and here is where you will see all of the different platforms that Voicify can deploy to, such as creating an Alexa skill, a Google Action, and Dialogflow chatbots, an Azure bot service, which can be deployed to many different channels like Cortana, web-based chat, Slack, Microsoft Teams. You can generate your Bixby capsule, and you can even use the custom assistant endpoint to be able to route these requests from any other platform simply by just sending the text of what the user said. So to deploy to Alexa and Google, what we need to do is actually log in with our different developer accounts and then choose to create a new skill. So I can do that now by clicking Login with Amazon. So now I can click Allow to allow Voicify to have access to my sign-in. And when I do that, I'll be taken back to Voicify, where or now if I go back to that deployment setting, I can select from my vendor since I'm a member of more than one. In this case, I'll deploy it to our Voicify vendor. And then I can choose to either create a new skill or attach all of this Voicify stuff to an existing one. In this case, we don't have an app or a skill yet for my CBS, so I'll just say create a new skill and link. Now, we can follow the same exact process for Google. I can say sign in with Google, choose my Google account I want to use, say allow, and then once again come back in, choose the Dialogflow agent I want to deploy to, and then I can actually go and set up my action from there. But let's go test this out on our Echo. So in order to do that, we need to head over to the Amazon Developer Console or the Alexa Developer Console, and then turn on testing, and then hit it up on one of these devices. In the Alexa Developer Console, Voicify will automatically scaffold all of my intents and utterances and endpoints and interfaces and everything else that we can support, including some of the beta features like can't fulfill intent requests that Voicify will handle for me. Now it'll also kick off a build for me, which means that we just need to wait for our build to finish, and then we can head over to the Test tab and turn on testing. So now with our build succeeded, we can switch on development mode. And now let's test it out on this Echo spot. Alexa, open my CBS.
Welcome to my CBS. You can ask about podcasts by category, or say live stream to hop into the live stream.
Politics.
We have a number of different politics podcasts. Would you like to just hear the latest? You can also say the name of a specific episode.
Yeah.
Today's CBS Evening News Podcast is sponsored by Home Advisor. We expect a lot from our homes.
So now that we've heard the latest podcast by following that flow we set up, let's see if we can also get the live stream to work. Alexa, open my CBS.
Welcome to my CBS. You can ask about podcasts by category, or say live stream to hop into the live stream.
Live stream.
This is about misconduct, Professor Butler. I'm glad to be able to say that we know there are good...
Now, if you don't have an Alexa device that you want to test on for a flow like this where we're using the audio player, you can't even use the simulator in the Alexa Developer Console because you'll get back a response that basically says the audio player is not supported. Fortunately, in Voicify, we can actually switch over and use the built-in simulator. At the app level, I can head over to the simulator tab and I can test out all my flows and preview what they're going to sound like and look like across all of the different types of devices that we can support. So from looking at extra large screens on Alexa like the Fire TV to the Echo Spot, Bixby on mobile, Cortana on desktop, and Google Assistant on mobile and smart screen, or even just the audio environments. We can start to test out those flows, validate that everything's set up right, without even having to actually create the skill or the action in the first place. So for example here, if I were to switch this to Google Assistant, where we haven't even deployed a Google action, I can still test out these flows, where for example, if I say something like politics, I'll get my expected response back that I set up. We have a number of different politics podcasts. Would you like to hear the latest? You can also say the name of a specific episode, and I can even listen to how Google is going to say this while testing it against the different speakers. That way I understand like my SSML output sounds right or any adjustments I've made sound right. But I can continue the conversation from here by saying something like no, right? So we can make sure our no response works properly. We have, well, what else can I help you with? If I go back to saying politics, then we can say yes, and we can even use this to validate our integration. So we know that when we said yes, we were going to pull that response back from that remote source, and we have that as the audio file. And I can even now play this as 19-minute and 56-second audio.
Today's CBS Evening News Podcast is sponsored by Home Advisor.
Right, and I can shuffle through it and
Things that you want to change.
play from different areas, start over and all that, make sure that it is the right audio file, validate the integration's working, that my flow is set up properly. But I can even test out the live streams, including on platforms that might not even support it. So for example, from here, if I say live stream, I'll get that response back and be able to play that as well.
Of 2020 found no evidence for a Ferguson effect linking police killings of black citizens to the homicide spike.
So if I pause it, I can replay it.
there had been no data that had been actually collected.
And the whole time I'm using this, I can also go and view the history of the conversation items that were hit and even navigate back over to them. So let's say that my response for the no, don't play the latest didn't quite sound like what I wanted it to. I can actually click here, navigate to that conversation item, make any changes I want, go right back into it and test again, even in the same session. So if I wanted to set up this new response and say, instead of saying, well, what else can I help you with, and say, that's all right, want a different category, try saying something like news or sports. And when I save and close this, I can go back over to the simulator in the same flow, say politics again to get back into that contextual conversation. And now when I say no, I'll get that same conversation item showing up in history, but I'll see my new response that I just created. Now that setup is also true no matter where you deploy it. All changes you make in Voicify are instantly available across all the different devices and types and assistants and everywhere else that you've sent this to. So you can make changes on the fly, including creating new intents, new utterances, new flows, new integrations, new media. Once you have it linked once and deployed, you can make those adjustments right on the fly, including production Alexa skills and Google Actions. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And that's all there is to it. We can deploy this app anywhere else that we want to that's conversational. We can create a Bixby capsule, a Cortana skill, a Google Action, a flash briefing skill. We can create chatbots on any platform, including custom embedded ones. It's all just around, creating and managing those conversations and those integrations in Voicify.
Thanks, Alex. I hope you had a good opportunity there to really see some of the capabilities of the platform. Now, while that was just one use case of media distribution and seeing how you can leverage Voicify to build a voice application like that, there are so many other capabilities within the platform. This is just a list of a few of the features that you're going to have access to with Voicify. All of this is also available on our website. I do want to call out that there are additional business use cases that you may want to consider. Things like voice commerce. Obviously, this is an area where we're seeing continued growth in this day and age, as well as the ability to do things such as supporting customer support calls through voice application to reduce call center volume, and then also just to increase efficiency within businesses that are strapped right now, just trying to deal with the volume of questions that are coming through. There are a number of these types of use cases that can be built with the Voicify platform because of the just the capabilities that it's able to offer. We encourage you to contact us. If you just have questions and you want to learn more about the space, we're passionate about making sure that we're able to keep you informed. And also, if you want to talk about some of these use cases, or if you want to see some of these examples in greater detail, we'd be happy to dig in a little bit deeper with you as well. Last thing is, if you have a use case that you want to just try out, we've found that that's a great way to get to know the platform. So we'll look forward to hearing from you, and thanks so much.